All right. Good morning. Another great week here on Account-Based Fridays. And we are joined today by another special guest, the editor of Demand Gen Reports. We were just kidding around saying she's the queen of Demand Gen Reports because she wears so many hats, and so thrilled that Claudia could join us from Demand Gen Reports today. Claudia, one of many of hats that you wear, and we'll give you a moment here to introduce yourself as well. But events is near and dear to your heart. And I know the last time I personally saw you was at one of your own events in August that you threw. And we thought this week's topic would be relevant for those that are planning 2022 events. A lot of people have events that are underway or the planning process for 2022. And a key question is like, what do I do? How do I even think about that? And so I have a question here on our weekly poll, and I also have another poll here that I wanted to briefly share, but wanted to get a sense of what people were thinking about for their 2022 poll or for their 2022 events. And the majority, when I framed this question up, seemed to be thinking about hybrid events. When I gave them the choice of that, smaller in-person events or 100% remote. Of course, there could be the bigger events too, like AWS had some recent big events as well. But maybe before I hop over to the other poll, Megan, do you have any thoughts on this or any blink reaction?
Yeah, I have to say I'm not surprised that this is the choice. I think this is just how it's going to be going forward. We're going to see. But here's what I like about it. I think what people found is that over the course of the last year, while our hand got forced to go 100% remote, we also found audiences got bigger in some cases. I mean, you saw people getting like crowds that they wouldn't have gotten at an in-person event, especially some vendor-led events, right? That normally maybe wouldn't have competed as much with events like the Demand Gen ones where it's kind of, vendor agnostic or sponsor agnostic. But I think what they found is they were attracting more people. And if their content was good, they stood out. And that means that having these hybrid events are letting them sort of get the best of both worlds. Yes, if you can do some things in person, you still take advantage of the folks that want to do that and want to get together. But at the same time, you're still able to maintain that audience that either can't or isn't ready to travel, and that still wants to see what you have to say, what your speakers have to say. And I think this has been really a positive outcome. I think it's also helped all of us to very quickly up our game in terms of the quality of the kinds of events that we're running from a remote perspective. Like I think we used to sort of phone that in a little bit. A lot of companies, not all, but many. And now you can't, right? You've really got to pay attention to the experience that everybody's having online or offline. But Claudia, talk about a front row seat to all of this. You've been in the thick of it from the beginning of all of the changes to how we run events, and super happy that you're here to talk with us about what you're seeing and hearing. And also in particular, would love to hear, how you've thought about making that remote and or hybrid experience really compelling, like to make that really worthwhile for people. I'm super excited to hear from you on that.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is great. So funny you say that because our B2B marketing exchange in Scottsdale, Arizona was always a very big event. And it was honestly from what I hear, it was like the last B2B marketing industry event of 2020. We just made it. And let me tell you, if we had to cancel that event, I would have cried for a very, very long time, only because I was actually like solo. I lost my entire team a month before. So I was running editorial by myself doing the event. So if I had lost that event, I would have been very sad, but we were very lucky and we were able to host the event. And everybody was, safe. We had masks available at that time, even though we really weren't sure what was going on just yet. But yeah. And then once everything shut down, it's like, all right, switch gears. What do we do? How do we get, stay engaged with our community for who knows how long, because we didn't know how long, we were going to be in lockdown for. But we were also very lucky in the sense that we are a digital media firm. So Demand Gen Report is part of G3 Communications. We were recently acquired by Emerald Expositions, which is an events company. but that was in the end of 2019. So prior to that, we were just a small digital marketing firm, and Demand Gen Report was just like one of the umbrella companies there. And we hosted a lot of webinars. Like that was one of our big money makers. We had like a webinar series, one every quarter on different topics. A lot of vendors, participated. We had sponsors, each one had their own kind of webinar throughout the week, and we still do those. So we were lucky in the sense that, we had a little bit of a virtual, like button on our vest there. And we kind of just took it to the next level and began, doing a lot of, virtual events. And we had to obviously turn our live events to virtual. And, with a small team, a physical event is very hard. But a virtual event was just as hard and, time consuming and difficult. And now as we go into 2022, I'm sorry, I don't want to say 2020 again. That's the bad word. That's the bad year. But as we go into 2022, we are in the thick of planning for our B2B marketing exchange in Scottsdale, Arizona. We're going back in person in Scottsdale at the end of February 2022. And we had our Boston event, our sales and marketing exchange in August, and that was very well received. Much smaller, a lot different. Rooms are emptier. They look, and you have that feeling like, oh crap, like there's nobody here, nobody watching my session, but at the end of the day, it was all about, maintaining social distancing and keeping everybody safe. So yeah, it looked smaller. It looked, not as crazy and, energetic, but it was still great. As long as the content is great, then people are happy, if they get that opportunity to learn something new and take something back to their offices or home offices right away. That's the money spot, like right there. And yeah, so now we're planning for our Scottsdale event, and there's a lot of questions. They're like, all right, what are you doing to make it hybrid? What are you doing to make it, adding virtual components to it? So it's a lot to think about, and we can't go right so hard into a full hybrid model because, like we were saying earlier, it's kind of like that generation 1 iPhone, it's great. It's awesome. It looks cool, but there are kinks and there are, issues there. So whether it's, even, these solution providers offering different solutions now, they're still working on their stuff too. You know what I mean? So it's difficult, but it can be done. And the fact that everybody is also very willing, like we've been, surveying a lot of our audience and things like that, and constantly asking them, like, do you feel comfortable going back? I think customer feedback surveys, that's so key, just in general, but for events, just get to know what your audience wants and what they, what they're looking for. If they're like, hell no, we don't want to be in person at all, and that's the majority, then we wouldn't have, done these in-person events. But we did get a very, a huge chunk of people are really excited and really, eager to get back to in-person. So now it's just a matter of, finding that balance. I just rambled so much, but please let me know if I
I think you're right. I think you bring up a great point. I mean, people seem to be, at least I'm itching to get out of the house and, have some sort of interaction and get away from my family who's can't hear me in the other room. But I think just having that interaction would be terrific to have face to face. I was on a call earlier today, and you said something interesting about how the level of effort and energy it's pretty significant to do a virtual event and a physical event. And the call was with a bunch of CMOs, and we were talking coincidentally about events. And on average, it sounded like there was about a 30% increase in terms of investment above and beyond the 2019 levels to do both a physical and a virtual event. So to your point, it sounds like there's almost not only a person cost and a planning cost, but there's also the financial cost. What are you seeing there, or what are you feeling in terms of running that single event, both from a cost and a people wise, different from maybe times past?
I mean, it's hard to say because it honestly feels like you're putting on two events, right? So that's gonna cost money. So you're paying this. Our event is at the Phoenician Resort in Scottsdale, and that is a very fancy resort, and it's beautiful. So we're paying for all of that, plus thinking about which solutions and which vendors to use, which tools for that virtual element, and having the people, like the staffing, like I don't even think we have enough staff for a physical event on its own, let alone having these two events going on. So that's why I said like it'll be difficult, and we having you need the bandwidth and you need the money to really, essentially you're putting on two shows at once. So it's a lot. So that's why we're kind of just dipping our toe in slowly, instead of going, full blown, yes, marketing it as a full blown hybrid event where we're live streaming sessions, but everybody's in Scottsdale, but then there are other people, joining remotely and things like that. It's a lot. So it's like, I guess, like everything else, just really, do that crawl, walk, run approach, and just see how people resonate with these little, things that you're adding to your, own event. That's the best we could do at this point.
Well, and I think this is an important consideration for marketing leaders, right? To say, you can't just tell your team, oh, well, just make it hybrid and assume it's the same level of effort. And like you said, teams run lean and mean these days. So, and even if you want to hire people, like it's, demand for talent is so high right now. Like, it's not like you can just add people like that. So, for all of these reasons, I think marketing leaders who are putting on events really need to be conscious of how much they can reasonably expect their teams to take on, how much they can take on to have a really high quality hybrid experience is more than twice the work. And so if you look at it that way and you don't just assume, oh, it's a throwaway, like we'll make it hybrid, plan for it, put the time aside, put the effort aside, right?
Yeah, it's much easier said than done to say hybrid. It's like that's the big buzzword lately. It's like, yeah, we're going to go hybrid. Much easier said than done. So again, just kind of crawl into it, instead of going full blown, because you don't know how people are even going to react or resonate with it to begin with.
Hey, Claudia, great to hear from you, and thanks for the overview. Quick question: how do you work through the networking side? I know the big challenge of hybrid versus physical has always been, how do you get people to talk among themselves digitally? Curious on how you're doing that and what successes you've had, and is that a constant challenge as well on a hybrid versus obviously live?
Yeah, honestly, it's a challenge, even from like as an editor speaking and how we've done all this, market research and stuff. It is a huge challenge, the whole networking aspect. But we were lucky, with our virtual events, they were long, we very much mimicked in person in our virtual events. So they were 3-day events all day. So how do you get people to engage and talk to each other? So a variety of different, we used Swap Card. So they allowed us to do a lot of, unique, virtual networking. We did a lot of roundtables, very similar to this, almost like, a Zoom call, where we just, on the agenda, we put on, what the topic is, just a short, brief description, like, hey, join us for this conversation. We'll have somebody facilitating it. Maybe we'll have an analyst come in to, chime in wherever they can, and then let people just talk. So roundtables were very, very popular and worked very well for us. In terms of networking receptions, events were so, popular for, the networking and the parties, have cocktails after all these sessions, and things like that. And, we loved putting on like parties at our events too. So how can you mimic that virtually? So one cool thing that we did was, we had he's actually a very close friend of mine. His name is Harry Mack, and he's like a very popular YouTuber, freestyle rapper. So he actually like was able to pivot during the pandemic as well, because he did a lot of things, in person, where he would just walk around the Venice boardwalk, the Venice Beach boardwalk, and just look at people's clothing and what they're wearing, and he would freestyle, and he just like blew up. So he turned his kind of show into a virtual thing and attended conferences. So it was like a Zoom virtual reception, and people would engage in the chat, and they would just type in like a word or two, and he would just go down the line of the chat and just freestyle. So like that kind of entertainment was really fun. And, you know, that got people started to bring, like, all of a sudden we saw kids on camera, kids were watching, you know, the whole family kind of showed up. Even my husband like came upstairs into my home office right here. He's like listening. And so, you know, whenever you could do something fun and unique like that, that really, you know, gets people to want to attend and want to see, you know, what could this possibly be? Another thing that we also did to drive engagement, we have a partnership with GrubHub, actually, and they also had to pivot during the pandemic because they would, you know, cater different in-person events and things like that, or meetings, business meetings, things like that. So we came to a partnership with them where, hey, attend our webinar series live, and we'll send you a free lunch credit. And that was huge. You know, people love that. They're like, all right, this is something worth attending. It's a topic that I'm interested in. And, you know, hey, if I attend live instead of watching on demand or something like that, where, you know, you really want those live, you know, attendance numbers sometimes, just add that little incentive. One final thing I'll say to drive engagement, what we did with virtual direct mail was very big. And in the beginning, everybody thought like, okay, direct mail is, we don't need it because we can't, you know, nobody's in their office. We can't send it to their homes. Like, God forbid we send it to their homes. Right. But now, you know, everybody was, you know, turned out to be, it was okay to send to people's homes. They just had to opt in and share their address. So that's what we did in all of our forms is, you know, if you're interested, you know, if you're okay with it, you know, share your address. It's a one-time thing. We're going to send you, you know, a welcome box for our event. And there were some, you know, there's different pamphlets and things in there that, you know, got people to, you know, take pictures and share things on social, and QR codes also came back. QR codes were like huge to really get people to engage and share things and talk to each other. So those are just a few different examples to drive engagement. And I don't think any of them are going to go away. I think they're going to like still, you know, be around, still be pretty prominent, because again, now you have so many people putting on events, whether they're in person or virtual. They, you know, everybody wants this specific audience's attention. So how do you stand out? And then, you know, it's just like, you know, how do you stand out with your digital content nowadays? You know, you have to get creative. So yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I know I just attended MarTech vendors event this past week, and they invited me to go in person. It was in Texas, and I had some other commitments that I couldn't make it, but they also had a virtual side. And to your point, what they did was they made the content very engaging. Like, they really broke up the content. I almost felt like it was borderline television where, yes, you'd get the very concentrated content, but they peppered it with a variety of different things. And the format was very short form format. So it forced you to, not force, but it encouraged you to engage in a very creative way. In fact, I think one of the folks that's on today's call was at that event. Lenise, were you in person in that event, or did you go remote? If you're in a position where you can come off mute, you may not be in a position to come off mute. But you know, there were about 500 people that were online, and if you can chat, how many people were in person there? Just out of curiosity, 300. All right, so that gives you an idea of the ratio, or at least 500 that I could see on my system. And they also had a kind of a message board where you could post pictures of doing something funny and crazy, and it was kind of interactive in that regard. But it seemed to be more entertainment type orientation with really good content kind of peppered in between.
So Claudia, you reminded me, you know, one of the things that B2BMX has become known for is actually its networking and sort of being one of the more engaging B2B events. And I think, you know, as you've seen other events sort of either get bigger or go away, like this one, I think has become kind of a centerpiece of the B2B calendar, which, you know, congratulations on that one. What are some of the things that, as you think about sort of themes for the event or content for the event, what are some of the ways that you plan to really kind of keep that premier event? Like what do you keep in mind in terms of content planning?
Honestly, and it's been this even before the pandemic, and it's even more prominent now. It's our audience. They just want to see they just want to be inspired by other practitioners. They want to see, people from either their industries or their company sizes, and they just want to learn from each other. So that's why, we're so big on I don't want anybody coming up on stage and doing a full sales pitch of their product. You know what I mean? I want actionable, real takeaways. I want customer stories. I want the customer on stage, and I just want our audience to see people like them, seeing what they're doing, and seeing how they could, take it home to their home office or in office, as soon as they get back from, let's say, Scottsdale, right? So that's always been a key thing, and always in the back of our heads when planning our content. It's like, why is this relevant for B2B marketing and sales professionals? What can they take away from it? So we kind of push that on all of our speakers all the time. Even when it comes to them, sending us their title and abstract for their session, we're just like, I want a solid abstract with at least 4 to 5 bullets of key takeaways of what you can guarantee the audience will walk away with. And please, no sales pitches.
Yeah, that's the key. And I think that coaching for your speakers, right? Don't assume they know how to make that engaging and compelling. And also, I think people really want the coaching, right? Like, you're an expert in that. You know how to make it stand out. Hopefully people take that in the spirit it's intended, and that it's really like, hey, I'm trying to help you shine at this event.
Yeah.
So it's great you do that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I want people to look good. I want people to attend their sessions.
Yeah.
So, we're happy, we get on content calls with our speakers and our sponsors who, they get speaking sessions, depending on the sponsorship and things like that. But anytime we have these conversations, we always hop on, just a quick brainstorm. Hey, even if you do have ideas, we'd love to hear them. Maybe we could, provide some additional feedback. Maybe we could even, if you're thinking of putting a panel together, we're happy to, reach out to our community, see if we know anybody that would be a great fit for this panel and things like that. So it really is just, you're just like working with your own colleagues internally, but you're just brainstorming with some external speakers and sponsors and things like that. And it's fun. It gets creative, and, we have a little good time, and that's it. 30 minutes, we're done. Put it on the agenda and, promote it as best as we can. And it's been working for us. So
I think the timing of your events too have been your in-person events, because I attended the 2020 in Phoenix or Scottsdale, and it being at the beginning of the year before things get too carried away. It's like the first conference of the year. So you get a lot of momentum there. And then the other interesting timing, I was a little skeptical on August. I'm like, wow, August in Boston, usually you wouldn't get a lot of people. But in fact, just the opposite. In the last August event, I think I probably had 50 people in my workshop session, which is before your actual event, but associated with the event.
Mhm.
So it seems like your timing, like you guys have a really good timing pattern down. Are there any other tips or advice, whether it be timing or anything else, as we're wrapping up here toward the bottom of the hour? Any other tips or advice or suggestions you'd give to others as they think through their 2022 planning for events?
First things first, I'll say, don't be afraid to get creative and do something different. If it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, you always have another event, that you could, try something new in. But in terms of, just planning in general, test different solutions, test different, partners. Again, feedback from your audience, from customers or whoever it is that would be attending your event. Send surveys, keep them short and sweet. Don't make people spend 15 minutes on a big survey. Try to get down to the nitty gritty and as little questions as possible. And yeah, that's really all I could say. being agile and innovative. We've seen marketers do it for the past 18 plus months. So I have no doubt that, it won't, it'll definitely work out for everyone, as long as you just try, have some fun with it, get creative. Like I said, we weren't sure if a freestyle rapper would resonate with the B2B, marketing community, but it did, and everybody loved it and their families loved it. So just, thinking outside the box is really key here. And again, we're a small team, so don't be afraid to, at our company at Demand Gen Report, like no job is too small. Like nothing is below my pay grade. If you need me to do something, I will do it. And, if you're working with a small team, that's definitely something that you need. Just have each other's backs, and, you could argue your ideas, if, somebody doesn't agree with something, see what you can do. But again, it's just communicating and just being, innovative and creative and just thinking outside the box. That's what I would say.
Yeah, right on. I think the creativity has been one of the most fun things to come out of the last, 18 months, I think, is people just coming up with great ideas to say, how can we make this fun? Like, I think we don't ask that question enough sometimes in B2B, and it does seem to make a big difference when people go down that road. Claudia, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We know this is such a busy time of year for everybody, so we really appreciate you taking a moment to share some suggestions with people as we're all going into planning mode, or already have been in planning mode in some cases. And John, next week, super excited to say one of my favorite people is joining us, Ann Ward, who is runs her own business called Ward Certified. And that does not mean certifiably crazy. It means certifying people on fantastic presentation skills and engagement for events, things like that. Can all use a little coaching on how to do that better. And she's going to come and talk with us about how to be a really compelling and engaging presenter. And she coached the team, my old team at Serious Decisions, for many years. So if you ever went to those events and saw folks up on the stage and thought they did a nice job, a lot of that came down to many years of coaching from Anne. So teaching us, literally her concept was how to be a rock star presenter. So anyhow, she'll be with us next week, and excited to have her. And that'll be our last Account-Based Friday for until the new year. We're taking a little break for the holidays. Hopefully everybody else is too. And but don't miss next week with Anne.
Yes, next week, a regular time. And then in the new year, we're going to shift by an hour to 12 Eastern. So stay tuned for the invite on that. And Claudia, thank you for coming out again. Really grateful to see you on Zoom. I think it's been a couple months since I've seen you in person, but if somebody wants to go to B2BMX or get a hold of you, what's the best way? Oh, you just dropped it in the chat there.
I put my email in the chat,
excellent.
But again, you could find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Definitely reach out. Would love to have, anybody come on down to Scottsdale. However, if you do email me, just fair warning, you're going to get a voice memo back because I broke my arm. So I can't really type with one hand, but you'll get a nice voice memo from me. So yeah, happy to answer any additional questions you have, and hopefully I'll see you in Scottsdale.
The bionic woman. She's going to replace that arm. Excellent. Well, thank you again, Claudia. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you in Arizona.